If you're thinking about getting a brand new Ford Bronco, there's a couple of things you need to know. There's actually two different Ford Broncos, and in this video, I'm going to help you decide which one is right for you. The last time the Bronco was sold in the US was around 25 years ago, and now it's back. And Ford has put so much investment behind it, they're actually turning it into a sub-brand. In fact, some dealers in the US, about 100 of them, are actually going to set up separate Bronco showrooms within their dealership. I'm standing next to the Bronco Sport. This is the Badlands edition. And right now, about 23,000 Bronco Sports have been sold in the country. You can get this right now if you walk into a dealership. On the other hand, the Bronco, it's a bigger vehicle. You can't get it yet. It's not going to be available until starting sometime about summer of 2021. For design inspiration, Ford really looked at the original Bronco from 1966, and they tried to emulate or sort of use as inspiration these round headlights and the traditional grille. So both Broncos have a little bit of a similar look, but let's cover the differences. Now, the biggest difference, first and foremost, is the size. This is the Bronco Sport. Some people are going to call it the baby Bronco. It's a lot smaller. It's based on the Ford Escape, but it's actually about 10 inches shorter than the Ford Escape. So this is a unibody design. It's going to drive more like a car. The big Bronco, or just the Bronco, that's body on frame. That is going to be based on a truck platform. In fact, the upcoming Ford Ranger. The Bronco Sport that I'm sitting in comes only in a 4-door configuration. That's 4 fingers. The Bronco comes in both 2-door and 4-door. This is 173 inches long with 4 doors. The 2-door Bronco is 174 inches long. So you can see it's already kind of a bigger vehicle. And the 4-door Bronco, that's 189 inches long. It's a much bigger vehicle. So let's talk cargo space. With the rear seat up in this Bronco Sport, you got about 30 cubic feet of storage. With it down, you've got about 60. In the 4-door Bronco, with the rear seat up, you got about 30 cubic feet of storage space, but with it down, you got about 78. So it's actually significantly bigger in terms of the amount of stuff you can put back there. So even though the Bronco Sport is a little bit shorter than the Ford Edge, it's actually got more usable space in here, and the headroom is pretty good because it's got this really boxy style. I'm 5'9" and I'm sitting behind myself. I can kind of get my legs in okay here. Headroom is definitely not a problem. There's definitely not going to be a big problem putting a couple people in the back seat for a short period of time. If you want to do a mega long road trip with tall people in the front, you might look at something else. The Bronco Sport is really a compact or maybe even a subcompact SUV depending on how you define it. The Bronco is a mid-size SUV. This really competes with the Jeep Renegade and the Jeep Compass, whereas the big Bronco, that's competing with the Jeep Wrangler. And one of the other major differences between the big Bronco and this Bronco Sport are the engine choices. This Bronco Sport is the Badlands edition, and this gets the biggest engine that you can get in the Bronco Sport. This is the 2-liter EcoBoost. It's a 4-cylinder. It makes 245 horsepower and 275 pound-feet of torque. And by the way, that's more powerful than the competition in its class. The other engine available in the Bronco Sport is a 1.5-liter. It's a 3-cylinder, makes 181 horsepower and 190 pound-feet of torque. In the bigger Bronco, you've also got 2 engine choices, but they're different than this one. You get either a 2.3-liter EcoBoost engine making 270 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque, or you have the option of the bigger engine. It's the twin-turbo V6. It's the 2.7-liter EcoBoost. It makes 310 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. There are different transmission choices for the Bronco Sport and the big Bronco. This Bronco Sport only comes with an 8-speed automatic transmission. By the way, it's pretty good. And you got no other choice. On the big Bronco, you actually have 2 transmission choices. There's an 8-speed auto, and if you get the 6-cylinder, you have to get the automatic. But if you're a save the manuals kind of person, you can get the 4-cylinder Bronco, and you can get a 7-speed manual transmission. And the 7th speed, or actually I would call it the first speed, is actually a crawler gear. It's labeled C for crawler, so that is going to be good if you're going to be doing some really low speed stuff like maybe some rock crawling. The 4-wheel drive systems are different from the Bronco and the Bronco Sport. So this is the Sport. It's based on the Ford Escape, and that means it is front-wheel drive biased. But it has something called a power transfer unit, so it can send up to about half the torque to the rear wheels as you need it. It's an on-demand system. Now, there's different grades of the Bronco Sport that you can get. This is the Badlands, and this is the most off-road capable, except for one other called the First Edition. Now, the First Edition is completely sold out, so you can't get it, but this has all the capabilities of the First Edition. And the differences between this Bronco Sport and the lower models, there's a couple of differences. The power transfer unit up front, which sends power to the back, it is liquid cooled in this. This also has a rear differential with a dual clutch system, which is torque vectoring, which means you can send power from one side to the other side as needed, basically up to almost 100% of the torque. This Badlands has some other differences which make it more off-road capable as well. You've got more controls over the drivetrain, and you can essentially lock the front and the rear together, and you can also sort of lock the rear end too. So it's actually pretty good off-road. I've been having some pretty good luck with this. On the Bronco, it's got a proper transfer case. In fact, there's two different transfer cases that you can get depending on the options. The base transfer case has a shift on the fly unit, which is from the Ford F-150 truck. And there's a different transfer case, an upgraded transfer case that you can get with an electromechanical shifting unit, and it has a lower final drive ratio that is 3.06 to 1. The Bronco has locking front and rear differentials, and you can also get the option of an anti-roll bar disconnect system, kind of like what the Jeep Wrangler has. So it is really a competitor to the Jeep Wrangler. It's much more off-road capable, it's higher, it's got more ground clearance, it's got bigger wheels and tires, it's just more heavy duty, and it's going to be able to take you in much more difficult terrain than this will. After all, it is much more truck-like than this. So this is more car-like, the big Bronco, more truck-like. The bodies are completely different too. With this, you only get one body. It's this four-door configuration. Personally, I think it looks pretty handsome. I get kind of a little bit of Land Rover vibes here. Now, with the big Bronco, it's completely different. It's body on frame, it's truck-based. You can remove the doors, both doors. You can remove the fenders. It basically is a convertible, so every Bronco, you can take the top off and have a convertible. You also have multiple hardtop options too. And it's basically the difference between riding on the beach with everything open, you can just ride it completely open, versus this where you're basically enclosed in a cabin the entire time. So really a completely different experience. Also, the big Bronco is assembled in the US, whereas this Bronco Sport is assembled in Mexico. But if you're thinking about differences in build quality, I find this to be pretty high, actually. The Bronco is going to be basically infinitely customizable. There are all kinds of aftermarket things that are getting ready right now, including aftermarket fenders and wheels and tires. There's going to be a large number of aftermarket customization options available for the big Bronco directly through the dealer. Now, this is also customizable as well. There's a lot of dealer stuff that you can get too. There's all kinds of different roof racks. There's a lot of different customizable things too with the wheels, but basically it's not as customizable as the big Bronco. This is a little bit more, the way you see it is the way you get it. You can't change the fender flares, for example. Big Bronco, there's a lot of stuff you can change on it. Let's talk price. The Bronco Sport with the 1.5 cylinder engine, the base starts at about $27,000. Remember, this is smaller, it's gonna be more comfortable on road, it's gonna be a better compromise between city and off-road. This Badlands is about $36,000. It doesn't have a lot of options on it, but this is the higher trim package. I just did a full review of this. I went off-road. It's very good. I'm gonna have a link to that video up here somewhere. The Bronco Sport comes in 5 different grades, including the First Edition. Remember, you can't really buy the First Edition, so effectively it's 4 different grades. This Badlands is effectively the highest trim level that you can get. If you want to go off-roading, this is the one to get. If you want to cruise around the city more and you don't care about off-roading so much, you can get away with one of the lower grades. In fact, you can get leather in some of the lower grades. This is cloth. So the biggest difference between the Bronco and the Bronco Sport is that you can go to a dealer and get this right now, whereas the Bronco, you need to put in a reservation. Ford says they have about 190,000 reservations across all of North America, so I think about 125,000 for the US and the rest for Canada. If you put in your reservation for a Bronco and you're pretty early, hopefully you're going to get it sometime this summer. If you haven't put your order in yet, you're probably gonna have to wait until 2022. So unofficially, I've heard that there are some delays due to the fabric roof, the cloth roofs. I'm not exactly sure what that is. That's not confirmed. So there might be a little bit of a delay in getting your Bronco out. By the way, none of this is sponsored. I'm not a Ford employee. I'm not paid by Ford. This is a Ford vehicle. This is a press vehicle. I want to thank Ford very much for lending me this, but I'm no way affiliated with Ford. My name is Eric. Thanks so much for watching, and check out the review on this, which is coming really soon.